This is Peter with the Sampleist, and today I'm very excited to talk to you about Falcon 3 by UVI. Falcon is a very powerful hybrid instrument featuring 20 different oscillator types, over 100 effects, and 12 modulation types. Oscillators include sample-based engines along with subtractive, PM, FM, wavetable, additive, formant, and physical modeling synthesis engines. These are further heightened by a powerful scripting capability and MIDI processor. And all of these tools are provided in a semi-modular environment, giving sound designers a soaring toolkit to make new and exciting sounds. Falcon comes with a formidable set of 1,500 factory patches, each with customized macro controls and covering a variety of styles. Every purchase of Falcon includes a $100 voucher to UVI's store, which can be used to further bolster Falcon or explore other aspects of UVI's toolkit. As of the recording of this video, there are 24 official UVI add-ons for Falcon, alongside sets from many other third-party sound designers. It works as a standalone workstation alongside the usual VST, VST3, AU, and AAX options. It's MPE compatible and includes some factory presets specifically designed for this technology. The installer, including factory library, will take up about 1.1 gigabytes of disk space. Falcon 3 normally retails for $349 and was a free upgrade for those who already had Falcon 2. Will this Falcon catch you in its talons? Let's find out as we fly through some of the new features. Just a quick note before I get started. I'm going to be focusing on new stuff since the version 3 update. Version 3 sees the addition of 3 new oscillators, VOSIM, which is a type of formant, bowed string, and harmonic resonator. There are 4 new effects: opal, ladder filter, disperser, and harmonic resonator FX. There are also several new scripts, including a MIDI CC smoother, node ARP, motion grid, snowflakes, and improved MPE. There are numerous workflow improvements, including UI snapshots, a launch screen, and something that I am very excited about, which is MIDI out support. The entire factory library has had a facelift, but many of the pre-version 3 patches remain unchanged, other than a slick new GUI and reworked macros. We may have a separate presets only video for those of you who are completely new to Falcon, but in this video I will just highlight the new oscillators, plus show you how to quickly modify patches with the new effects and scripts. And of course there's a ton of other videos out from UVI and other prominent sound designers and composers, so feel free to check those out. So first, you can see there's this new Getting Started screen, which includes recently used patches, as well as some Getting Started templates, which are quite a useful way to get started. So I'm gonna use this as my launching point into VOSIM, and we're gonna do this theremin mono. Yeah, it's handy, a handy starting point. It already has some mapping to the mod wheel, a really nice theremin sound to it. If I look at the tree here, I can see it has a few effects on here in addition to the VOSIM oscillator. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'll go to the VOSIM module in here, and I will use this handy selector. So this is personally something I really like to see developers doing, and UVI definitely does this with Falcon, which is have little individual modularized presets. So of course we have our sound banks, which have a full suite of patches that affect everything: effects, mappings, modulations, oscillators, the whole shebang. But all of the individual components have their own little presets. So this VOSIM module has a few we can look at. So let's look at this daisy. let's just look at one more here. Let's look at the soprano A. Okay, so a few pretty interesting starting points here. And then obviously you can tweak all of these different settings. Now, the getting started screen is no longer here. So if I want to start with another one of these templates, which I will do to get into our next new oscillator, you can go under the menu and go under Program Templates. And now we can go to try the harmonic resonators. All right, now once again, let's go into our key group, into our oscillators. So you can see in this case, they've also added an analog oscillator. I'm going to actually turn that off. We'll hear the harmonic resonator by itself. All right, now let's look through a few of these presets. So we've got the metal bow one selected in this patch to start with. Let's try abstract pick. Polysaturn. And let's take a look at the wind swell. Just put the mod wheel up there. Some pretty cool sounds there. Now, finally, let's take a look at some of the bowed strings. All right, so we've got the bouncing preset here. A lot of these, I've noticed, have a sort of pulsing or tremolo or trilling feel to them, which is pretty cool. So let's listen to a few more. right, so that's a quick tour of some of the new oscillators. There are some patches in the library that'll use these and kind of have them in the mix with other things. But again, there's lots of other content out there that goes over the new patches in the new factory library. So what I'll do now is take a quick look at some of the effects. And to do so, I'm going to pull up some of the factory patches and add the effects on top. And I'll do the same thing with scripts. So first, I'm going to grab an arpeggiated patch here. Let's do this one. Here you can see the slick new graphical user interface with the macro controls at the bottom here. Quite a nice patch. I quite like that one. So I'm going to start from here and let's just add an opal. You will find opal under the dynamics here. All right, and let's look at the keys and let's try hot and slow. I'm going to turn the maximizer off for now. And we'll just do it once without the maximizer. Let's just flip through a few of these. Yeah, so this is a nice way to add some character to your sound. Maybe something subtle, maybe something more intense. We'll do one last one. All right, so that's opal. So the next one we'll look at is disperser. And for that, I'm just gonna switch to a different patch. Let's try this one. All right, it's the same thing. Let's go into the effects. Then under miscellaneous, we will find the disperser. Turn off the maximizer again. So that's the disperser. No presets for this one. I encourage you to experiment with this one. The next one we will look at is the ladder filter, which is obviously a type of filter. So let's try this minor redux. So again, just the nature of the ladder filter doesn't have presets, but as a filter, I think it's something you'll probably be more familiar with in general in terms of how they work. And again, not a huge number of weird parameters. These are all pretty straightforward. So let's just listen to how this will sound. I'm a big fan of visual feedback. I like having these sorts of features, and there's definitely this sort of thing going on throughout Falcon. And I think when we move to the scripts, we'll see with some of the new scripts, and I mean, obviously some of the old ones too, but with the new scripts, there's a lot of fun visuals that help you kind of understand what's going on. So really appreciate that about this instrument. Okay, so the last one we're going to look at are the harmonic resonator effects. So let's pull another patch. Right, and the harmonic resonator effects will be under the equalizer section. Just going to shift this up, give me a bit more real estate. So I'm playing a C here. Now I'll play an E. Has a pretty interesting effect when you're playing notes outside of what this, in this case, the preset says. So yeah, I think you could have a lot of fun with how this will sound depending on how your resonator jibes with the key that you're writing in. We'll stick with C for now. Right, so that's the harmonic resonator effects. Definitely a really cool way to add a completely different timbre signature on top of an existing patch. All right, so the last thing we're going to look at that's new in version 3 are some of the scripts. So in particular, I'll look at some of the different arpeggiators, and then I do have a usage of MIDI out in the demo track. So I think for this one, I'll just go with some keys. Let's do something like this. You'll find the new scripts in the events section. And the 3 I'll go over: node arp, motion grid, and snowflakes. They are all under the script processor, under the sequencing. So first we will look at the motion grid. One of the things I like in here is it allows you to randomize the speeds. So we'll have different notes that come off of your root that kind of bounce around following these arrows. And each of these will go at different speeds, and you can click around and change the direction of how these are going. And for example, if we can turn these off just to hear how it would sound as a sequencer. You can see so I had initially played a C and then I played an E. And it changed the reference notes at the bottom, which can be changed with the scale. So quite a few different options up here. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of how it works. And then obviously these starting points will be at different points in the grid. Right, and last thing, you can randomize the entire grid here using this button. So this will randomize your arrows and where your starting notes go. So if I, again, let's say, start at a B. So yeah, this one's a pretty interesting kind of generative, creative thing. I personally would find it useful to just see if something interesting can come out. Maybe if I'm stuck in a rut, just try out a few different things, randomize the grid, randomize the note patterns, and see if I catch something inspiring. Now let's go to the node arp. So there's sort of a similar concept here of things moving and bouncing around and changing direction. So let me just play a C here. Play C major. Let's randomize again. Now there's the start position control here. So I had it at 0, 0 before, which means everything will start in the same spot, which is, I guess, kind of closest to the middle. But this random start position will spread the different notes you're playing out to the different notes. So I've only played a triad there. Let me try putting in like a few more. Yeah, so this is another cool one that I think can help with just getting you out of a rut or thinking about something different, or if you're after something that's a bit more of a generative type music, this will work well. And then the last one is Snowflakes here. This one won't really generate different melodies for you. It's more of a rhythmic thing. So, and it's very straightforward to understand what's going on with the handy visuals and only 2 parameters to change. So yeah, some pretty interesting different scripts that'll help with just, yeah, thinking differently. And of course, having the MIDI out support means that these can be applied to instruments outside of Falcon. And that's pretty cool. All right, so that's it for the new Falcon 3 features and a little tour of them. Next, why don't we jump over to the demo and screech through that one. So there we have it, a demo for Falcon. For this track, you can see on the top, I basically just had a couple sections on the lighter side, happier side, a couple sections on the darker side, just to show some of the versatility. Everything in this track was Falcon except for two very specific things, which I will get to, but no external effects have been applied. There was just one case where I used the MIDI out capability, and one other case where I wanted to showcase how the synth works with orchestral instruments. But other than that, we have, I guess that's 23 different instances of Falcon to make this track. So to get us started, we just have a little bit of a lighter intro. You'll see lots of cases where I've automated the macros or the MIDI CC, the mod wheel, sorry. Using the macros here, it was really nice to bring in this gradual build to start out the track. Something a little bit more ethereal and just gently bringing us into something a little bit more serious. This Pieces of Star has a couple of nice pieces to it that you can play around with. So this nice pad sound to back it up, and a little soundscape that you can bring in and out. So that was a nice one to start the track. And then this Venus Crier here. Just a nice little, nice effect to add. In the next section, I brought in a keyboard and some arpeggiation. Yeah, and I quite like the moonbeam keys here. Has a really nice key sound, but also a couple of extra little things going on. It give a bit more interest, but it's at really nicely in this sort of light section that I was going for. And then here with the pedal, I played around with the gate. Just to give it a little bit more interest, and then towards the end brought up the grains macro. Yeah, it gives it just a nice little flutter. So everything up here is Falcon all the way through. Getting into the second light section, I start to bring in this other arpeggio. Nothing crazy here, but a good way to tie the two sections together. And then that was the Scavenger's Patch. And then so I brought in one of the color guitars, which uses a pluck oscillator. Which is, in the context of the mix, it's quite a convincing guitar sound. really sounded good to my ears. Just a basic bass here. Give it a little bit of a drive. And then the OB expression is actually, I've stacked two instruments or two presets here. So the OB expression so sorry, that's the soft mood, and then yeah, so again, being the workstation that it is, it's really easy to layer different patches together if you want to do that. There's also these handy workspace snapshots that will let you kind of store a state and reload it across 8 of them. So if you have, let's say A/B comparisons you want to do, or if you have different things you're working on, it's a handy way to just keep your work there. So we get through a bit of this. Oh yes, and the oo choir. So definitely has a synthy quality to it, but when it's in the context of the entire track, it actually sounds to me really good in terms of being this vocal quality. And I use that in the dark section coming up as well. This particular oo has on the mod wheel something that makes it changes the timbre quite a bit. Gives it just a bit more of a synthy nasally feel, which worked well for a build. So halfway through this section, I switch out the guitar and bring in an oscillator. I've used some external strings that are not Falcon, that are strings that I particularly like doing spiccato. But what I wanted to showcase here was what you can do with the MIDI out. So I actually, I just added in the scripting section, in the events section, an ostinato arp script and then a MIDI out. And it sounded really, really good. Yeah, so again, I'm really excited about this MIDI out capability. It extends some of the powerful scripting in Falcon out to your entire world of instruments, and was pretty straightforward to get going. Just add the MIDI out module and then hook it up however your DAW likes to hook up different MIDI inputs and outputs. And obviously, you could use it to control external MIDI as well. So opens up even more from Falcon. Okay, so then moving into this first dark section. So again, keeping that oo choir going, and in this dark section, it gives that really nice kind of disconcerting vocal quality. And then I brought in a few things. So physical cello. So this is something I made a small modification to. Uses the pluck oscillator. I just added a bit of noise. liked just, bringing in this little extra noise from the bass patch, gave it a bit of a nicer sound for me, but really easy to just go in there and make some modifications. And then I also added this bass drum. Yeah, so just gave me that extra little pulse. This was actually something I built from the drum oscillator using the drum oscillator presets. So just opened up a new program, threw in, ended up being 2 drum oscillators. This one uses the BD good one, and this one uses the BD fat freeze. So I didn't necessarily find any of the factory patches that had the kick that I wanted, but it was super easy to just build it myself with these oscillator presets. And then I could, even tweak things a little bit to get the exact sound I wanted. So I think that's all I'm going to say for this section. Just a quick word on this Meteor pad. So a lot of the pads I find have just this like little hint of movement to them, which is really nice. And in this case, with the mod wheel, we're actually modifying how much of a pulse is there. Yeah, so really appreciate the macros, the mod wheel aftertouch mappings on these patches to give them that little bit of extra expressivity and more options for how you can blend it into a piece. Okay, and then we'll get to the last section. So a couple of things right off the bat. I've got this bow bram, which is a new patch that includes the bowed string oscillator. Yeah, so right there. Yeah, it's got this sort of gritty sound to it, and I actually automated the mod wheel there. It gives it even more of a distortion. Definitely can think of a few different places I could use a sound like that. Let's just maybe pause for a second and listen to this guitar. Yeah, so definitely responsive to my different velocity in there. And just, there's enough change with the different velocity that makes it feel really expressive for me. So I quite liked this guitar sound. And then I had fun with this Cerebro loop too. Because of Falcon's reach, there's a ton of different types of genres that go into the presets, and you can find lots of beats that are helpful for, different things like trance or drum and bass. but there are quite a few loops in here that work well in a cinematic setting as well. And I felt like this one just gave that nice little cinematic flair. Yeah, and I had been just playing some Batman Arkham Knight and immediately gravitated towards the Gotham brass, but I really liked how this one sounded as kind of like a Bram. I did modify it a little bit just to shorten the release for this particular composition. So again, really easy to do it. Just ADSR was right down here in the edit window. So just played with these till it had the right tail that I wanted and sounded really great in here. And then obviously in this section, we come to the other spot. I used non-Falcon, which is for this solo horn. I just wanted to showcase how these sounds will complement orchestral things, because I think all in all, it blends really nicely together. The horn on top of this bed that the Falcon, different Falcon instances are making, just sounds really good together to me. They blend really nicely, and even if we look at just the brass, they mix really well together to my ear. Yeah, the Cyber Pipes was a factory patch where I added the opal effect to it. For me, it kind of cut the mix a little bit nicer to have that in there. So let's maybe play with and without it. Yeah, so when you throw everything in there together, I like how it sits better with opal on there. It just sticks out a little bit better in the mix. So opal is definitely something I'll need to experiment with a bit more personally, because in some cases the changes are quite subtle, but I think when mixing things together in the track, it's going to be really helpful to just give a little bit of space for different things. Yeah, and the last little bit at the end here. I just made up this texture track. Where are we? Right here. So I kind of started with the landscape preset and made some modifications, probably a fair number of modifications to what the original was. I added a whole bunch of reverb, a granulizer, and I added the harmonic resonator in here too. So I quite personally like this texture oscillator. I think it's not new for version 3, but it was a relatively recent addition in version 2. It came on one of the later updates, I believe. But I find there are There are lots of instruments out there that have sort of this similar vibe of having a couple of textures that you can swap between. And I think in the case of Falcon's version, it's really easy to just stick this in here and get something. I was playing around with the harmonic resonator, and I felt like adding it here gave it a little bit, for me, something special in terms of the texture it was creating. Yeah, and in fact, even playing with the mix dynamically through the track would be a pretty interesting thing to do, to add, yeah, just a bit more variation. I mean, often when you're dealing with textures like this, it's about the subtle changes, keeping them interesting enough so that the sound is evolving, but obviously not so interesting that they start to distract you from other things that are going on. And, bringing this slowly in. It has a pretty cool effect. Just as what I did actually do is mapped the granulizer to the mod wheel. By the way, that something I should have mentioned in the walkthrough, but I do like that there's some of the visual feedback on the modulation. So I did mention some of the scopes and other visuals, but I do like when there is a visual indication of the modulation that's happening. So I think that about does it for this composition. So hope you enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed making this composition. I always love just throwing a whole bunch of different instances of a synthesizer on things. And I am definitely a bit of a synth nut, so it was hard to stay restrained here. But yeah, I think this composition let me do some pretty versatile things with Falcon. There was a lot of great content in the factory patches, but it was also, I found, once you understand the user interface and how basically that you've got these parts with programs, and the programs have layers, and the layers have key groups, and then under the key groups you have your oscillators. Once you kind of understand how that structure works, it was really quick to even build a few of my own patches. And I'm looking forward to playing around to see what sort of chaos I can make when I have a bit more practice with this. So that'll about do it for my overview of Falcon 3. Remember, there's lots of material out there for Falcon in general, and for the update via UVI and other various sound designers. I hope that this showed a little bit more of the composer angle of fitting this in for like media and supporting compositions, and how this can blend very nicely with orchestral instruments and gives you lots of different moods you can play with. I do really like the attention to the macros and the modulations, which is really important if you're trying to shape a sound to fit a particular scene or mood or piece of gameplay. So the macros give you that control to shape it dynamically through the events that are happening that you're trying to write alongside. So really appreciate that the patches have the attention to this. Really like the MIDI out capability, that Falcon can now become a bit of a creative tool outside of just what's in the synth, but can help supercharge some of your orchestral writing or writing with other tools. And I also really like the modular nature of the different effects and oscillators that, these pieces in and of themselves have their own presets. So, given the extremely high number of oscillators and effects, you get a whole bunch of good starting points, and helps you kind of overcome how overwhelming that Falcon can possibly be, so that you can gently feather yourself into the environment. As an aside, Microsoft Bing really thinks that I am into birding now, so maybe just watch out for what your advertisers are going to think of you when you're looking up a whole bunch of information about Falcon. That's really one of the only downsides I can think of to getting this. So yeah, thank you once again. It was a pleasure to review this. Really big thanks to UVI for providing a review copy to our team. Would really appreciate it if you all continue to like and subscribe. We've said this before, but really means a lot to us to have the community support, and we hope to continue providing good content, keep bringing us those questions, keep giving us feedback, and we'll see you next time.